Hello there. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who have a slightly sensitive disposition politically, you may want to gird your loins for this one. I know how easily of a flutter you can get sometimes. No doubt, Gwen Stefani is an excitable young lady with plenty of mojo to work, and she gives it all she's got in Excuse Me, Mister. A song which, upon meditation, appears to be about some bloke ignoring her, in which she employs a rather clever analogy of herself as a destitute street person being ignored by a suit. Her love for him, seemingly nothing more than a spare change for beer sign lying in a puddle of piss outside Toby's on UFC night. But what many people don't realise is that Gwen Stefani no doubt drew on real-life experiences for that song. In particular, the 4 years they spent living just off Commercial Drive in the mid-90s as they immersed themselves in the richly entitled ancient art of street punkery and low-life motherfuckery. Yes, that's right. If you were walking down Commercial Drive in the mid-1990s and were of a generous disposition, ladies and gentlemen, you may well have bought a woven piece of string off a young and mucky-looking Gwen Stefani. It was a newspaper report on a local. It was a news report on a local TV station in LA that first inspired Stefani to move the band to the heart of Vancouver's East End. It painted a picture of a Victorian street circus free state, populated by colourful characters and performers. But as Stefani was later to admit, the scene that awaited her was less a production of Oliver Twist by Cirque du Soleil and more Beavis and Butthead meets Star Trek in the nasty beaming down accident. Nevertheless, whilst the rest of the band dedicated their time to practicing and writing songs, as the singer, Stefani could afford to just ponce about and spend most of her time hanging around outside the SkyTrain station and Café du Soleil, playing the penny whistle and jigging around, slightly pissed, in front of people with a grubby little paw outstretched. A natural street urchin, Stefani soon fell in with a band of quad-car street punks who had been trying to get to Tofino since 1987. Under whose Jedi-like tutelage she became so deftly adept at panhandling and low-level thievery that a young Libby Davis, then head of the NDP's youth wing, presented her with the party's Legion of Honour and a ceremonial dagger for cultural services beyond the call of duty. Stefani's initiation into the East Vancouver political life was a matter of good timing rather than hard work, as a campaign for Victorian vagabondery was currently being pursued by the local NDP. She spoke at rallies, shouted "motherfucker" at old Chinese people who blocked the crosswalk, and became a spokesperson for keying cars. Stefani's bright star soon caught the attention of the East Vancouver lesbian Taliban, who were looking at bolstering their numbers. You can't make this shit up, can you? You can try. Who were looking at bolstering their numbers in response to an increase in Albertan oil wealth and growing threat from the Presbyterian Baptist Army, after the election of our Playmobil president, Stephen Harper, to the riding of Calgary South. Their directive was, in case of attack by Harper's tanks, to keep the abortion clinics open and running 24 hours a day until the Kitsilano crew got up about noon and secured the yoga studios. But she failed the rigorous basic training regime at Camp Café Deux when she accidentally cleaned the men's toilet. She did, however, find a job through their outreach program in one of the numerous bike shops in the area which offer employment to otherwise unemployable members. But she was eventually fired for being too chipper and refusing to have a Rod Stewart haircut and her mouth washed out with piss each morning. In January of 1996, Stefani embarked upon a brief and tempestuous relationship with the leader of a local native gang, the Chuck Bandits, based out of the Waves coffee shop at Commercial and Broadway. I say based out of, they just sit in front of it, they're not actually allowed in there. However, all this started to unravel when he realised that she wasn't going to act as uninjured bait for their damsel in distress routine. On a Saturday afternoon in early February, and in a NyQuil and gin-fueled rage, he threw her onto the Millennium Line, where she laid helpless while waiting passengers zoned in on their handheld and headphones as the Metrotown Express barreled into the station. It was a SkyTrain worker who eventually heard her plaintive cries of, "Excuse me, mister. Excuse me, mister." Stefani's meagre diet of Ferrero Rocher and fags probably saved her life, as the worker had no problem pulling a ragdoll frame from the path of the Happy Town Shopper Special, carrying its usual cargo of vapid teenagers and folk with no better to do. Whilst in recovery, Stefani started to throw herself into writing. It was at this time that she first started penning "Excuse me, mister," as a dedication to that SkyTrain worker who, as she put it, heard her when no one else could, and who helped her when no one else would. She now readily admits that "Excuse me, mister" was an attempt to make some sense of that reckless and depraved period of her life. By the time she moved back to Anaheim in the late 90s, Stefani had acquired some bizarre talents. It is said that she could lick the silver off a spoon, and often regaled her LA buddies with her signature party trick, mutual grooming. Talents which she still attributes to those years spent amongst Vancouver's subcultural elite. Nowadays, as a mother of 3 young children living in a Buena Park suburb, Stefani is almost slightly embarrassed about the whole episode. She maintains that the greatest lesson she learned during those 4 years living in Vancouver was any business on the drive is definitely best concluded before noon when the zombies and the freaks emerge. Thank you.